Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Everyone, this is Mr. Middle Path, and inshallah, in the next few episodes, we'll be going over each chapter of the easy peasy method to quit pornography. I'll be sharing my insights, and hopefully, this helps you out with your journey. So, let's get started with the introduction, inshallah. This open source book will enable you to stop using pornography immediately, painlessly, and permanently without willpower or any sense of deprivation or sacrifice. So, right again, this is a pretty bold thing to say. And in real life and in life in general, nothing is painless, immediate, without willpower, without deprivation or sacrifice. I mean, this is an exaggeration. However, try not to take it too literally because he explains himself later as we read along, right? And it won't place any judgment, embarrassment, or pressure to undergo painful measures. And I think this is a big one. And I think this is why the easy peasy method is a good method, is because other methods put a lot of pressure on the idea of quitting. So when you keep thinking of quitting, what happens? Like, say you want to stop smoking cigarettes, but instead of going about your life and just living your life without cigarettes, you keep thinking about quitting cigarettes. Well, when you think about quitting cigarettes, you think about quitting, but then you also think about cigarettes. So you never stop. You keep thinking about it all the time. And that's the problem with a lot of the other methods of trying to quit these habits, right? Regardless of what it is, but specifically we're talking about pornography and masturbation in this case. In fact, there's absolutely no need to cut down or reduce your usage whilst reading. Doing so is actually detrimental. I disagree with this. Please cut down on your usage even if you're reading this, right? From the author's point of view, this kind of goes into what he was talking about when he's saying that he wants his method to be, he doesn't want you to feel pressure at all. So that's kind of where he's coming from. That's the place where he's coming from. But we know you definitely don't want to just go all out just because someone that you don't know in a book told you to. You might be apprehensive about the very thought, or one of the millions actively attempting to quit. If so, perhaps what you've already read goes against everything you've been told, but ask yourself if what you've been told has worked. If it had, you wouldn't be reading this book at all. Perhaps you identify with the following questions. And we're going to skip these questions, but basically, it's talking about the concept in psychology that we have when a habit gets in the way of your life, gets in the way of your relationships, gets in the way of your work, and you can't function as well as you can in society, then you know that that's a problematic use. So these questions are basically just talking about the pornography habit has taken over your relationships, has caused you not to have good relationships with people, has gotten in the way of your hobbies, etc. Right? A lot of different questions, but most people, even the people who can get away with it, even the people who have this habit or this who have this bad habit, but they have a job, they're stable, they have a long-term relationship with someone that they love, they're cool with their parents and their friends and their family, and they have hobbies. Even those people that have that habit that they do at night or whenever they do it, they still know in the depth of their soul that something is wrong and they wish they wouldn't do it, which is why they look up these methods in the first place, right? If you are a porn user that depends on it for masturbation or sex at all, for any reason, all you need to do is read on, right? So now let's keep going. Here they say this is a rewrite of Alan Carr's Easy Way to Quit Smoking, just so that you know where the foundation was. Do not jump chapters. We will not be jumping chapters, inshallah. We'll be going through each chapter one by one. So chapter one is this, and then chapter two is that. Chapter three has, look at chapter four, how many sections it has. But we'll be going over each chapter in each video, inshallah. Continue. The method described in this book is instantaneous, equally as effective for the heavy and casual user alike, causes no bad withdrawal pangs, needs no willpower, requires no shock treatment, aids, or stimulants, won't cause you to replace this addiction with other addictions such as overeating, smoking, or drinking, and is permanent. So some people, when they're talking about these things, they say, well, it didn't work for me. I have at least one subscriber who said, well, the easy peasy method didn't work for me. And I think the strength of the easy peasy method is not that you believe that it's instantaneous and without sacrifice and that you're never going to do it again and it's permanent. I think the strength of the easy peasy method is, if I scroll back up here, is this. Doesn't place any judgment, embarrassment, or pressure to undergo painful measures. And when you have no pressure, it's a lot easier to quit, right? Because specifically this habit itself is a very pressureful habit. But that doesn't mean that I don't think that it doesn't work. It's definitely less painless, more immediate, and more permanent than other methods. But obviously, saying that it's completely is an exaggeration. So just keep that in mind. You always want to read things a little bit critically. Warning: if you are expecting this book to scare you into quitting using various health issues and user risks such as sexual dysfunction, unreliable arousal, loss of interest in your sex partner, blah, 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 that is kind of what another website did, which is called Your Brain on Porn. And that had a very, very good plethora of studies on what would happen when you were under that addiction, right? And we'll use the term addiction for now. I know it's a controversial term. Like, is it an addiction? Is it not an addiction? If you want the method of quitting to be basically someone yelling at you saying that you're a filthy little worm and who's weak and spineless coward for not quitting, then you'll be disappointed once again. Again, this is like a pressure-free type of method, a judgment-free type of method. Those tactics never helped me to quit, and if they were going to help you, you'd have quit already. So again, the book is making some sensible points, and I like this most of all. Conventional methods of quitting advocate using willpower or porn diet substitution methods, such as using once every n days and cutting down consumption. Uh, in general, in psychology, from what I know and from what I studied and from working at psychiatric hospital, in general, a lot of the times, unless you're going to die from withdrawal, like it's an opiate type of addiction, people, we generally go for that cold turkey method, right? You can cut down a little bit, but that cold turkey method, something about it, man, is really good, but not everyone can handle that. So let's continue. He's saying some sites list peer-reviewed research about neurotransmitters and neuroplasticity, and while these sites are informative, many are aware of the health risks and choose to do nothing. Though such material is typically avoided, right? So it's talking about the scientific thing. So just knowing that it's bad for you in your brain is not usually enough to quit. And I think that is true. Ultimately, they are equally ineffective as they don't actually remove the reasons for using porn. Ultimately, turning something into a forbidden fruit isn't how you treat addiction. So I like this point a lot. And I think this sentence here underlines the essence of why easy peasy method is not a bad method to use or to try out if you haven't tried it before. Ultimately, turning something into a forbidden fruit isn't how you treat addiction. He gets into that more, and we will be getting into that more as the chapters go on. This method, referred to as easy peasy, works differently. Some of the things about to be said might be difficult to believe, but by the time you finish this book, you'll not only believe them, you'll wonder how you could ever have been brainwashed into believing otherwise. So now we see the method of this book is to shift your thoughts on how you see this addiction. So let's continue. There's a common misconception that we choose to watch porn. Porn addicts, yes, addicts, no more choose to watch porn than alcoholics choose to become alcoholics, than heroin addicts choose to become heroin addicts. So he goes on and says, yes, the first time someone does it, like the first time someone drinks alcohol, yeah, they chose to drink alcohol. But it's not like a teenager, the first time they drink alcohol, they just choose to become an alcoholic for the rest of their life. That happens later down the road. So it's the same thing when this 12-year-old or 13-year-old or 11-year-old kid watches a porn video for the first time in his life out of curiosity or just looking with his friends. They didn't decide in that moment that they're going to be addicted forever. That happened later on, sadly enough. But in the beginning, there was no decision like, hey, I'm going to be addicted to this. So that was the point that he's trying to make. Like every other user, you've been lured into the most sinister and subtle trap that man and nature have ever combined to devise. I mean, there's not a person alive, whether a user themselves or not, that likes the thought of their children using porn to cope for pleasure. And this is definitely true. I remember hearing a statement online. It was so funny. The guy said, if you are a user of porn and your grandmother walked in on you, you would feel righteous shame. And if you don't, then there's something wrong with you because everyone would feel righteous shame about that. And I think it was pretty funny, right? But it's true. Everyone knows deep down that it's wrong. And anyone who's trying to make an excuse that it's right usually is messing with their minds or playing with themselves. This, I didn't mean for that pun. No pun intended. They're playing games with themselves, is what I mean. This means that all addicts wish they had never started. That's unsurprising. No one needs porn to enjoy life or cope with stress before they get hooked, right? Like, what did people 1,000 years ago do? They obviously didn't do that. At the same time, all users wish to continue to use. After all, nobody forces us to launch our browsers incognito mode. Whether they understand the reason or not, it's only users that decide to knock on the doors of their online quote unquote harems. If there was a magic button that users could press to wake up the following morning as if they'd never accessed their first site, the only addicts tomorrow would be young people still experimenting. So he's saying if there was a magic button you could push, then most people using porn today would push it. So what's holding them back? According to the author, the only thing that prevents us from quitting is fear. Fear caused by the belief that we'll have to survive an indeterminate period of misery, deprivation, and unsatisfied craving in order to be free from porn. So, according to the author, and this is kind of the root of what he's getting at, fear is what's stopping people from quitting. And he gets into even more, if you can read between the lines, fear caused by the belief that we'll have to survive misery and deprivation. So he's saying that the belief is that people actually think porn is enjoyable and they fear missing out on it. So because they believe it's enjoyable and they believe that they like it and they believe that it's good to watch and they believe that they'll be missing out, therefore they're afraid that by quitting, they'll have to go through a period of misery. And what happens usually when people are trying to quit is eventually the desire to watch pornography overwhelms them, right? And they're like, well, when is this feeling of desire ever going to go away? It's always there in the background. So this is what the author is trying to get at. It's fear on the one hand of missing out, but then on the other hand, it's the belief that you're missing out in the first place. These spawn from irrational beliefs, both learned and acquired, such as masturbation or sex leading to orgasm is the only and most important thing in life, right? And I think not everyone believes that, or most people don't believe that, but they might believe that this actually is enjoyable for them and they actually want this. Porn is safer than real life sex because porn can't reject me. This is more for people who have problems with long term relationships or just people who have problems with relationships with people in general, right? Porn is educative and useful. I don't think anyone actually believes this anymore, but some people do, especially in the experimental phase when they're younger, start saying stuff to themselves. These irrational beliefs spawn irrational consequences when acted upon, such as, and this is a big one when it comes with specifically Muslims and Muslim brothers and sisters, worshiping and obsessing when a perfect 10 out of 10 is found, and holding out for a perfect 10. So both brothers and sisters are guilty of this from what I've seen. Holding out for a perfect 10 comes from the hyper-sexualized culture that we live in currently, irrespective of masturbation and pornography, which is definitely a huge part of the hypersexualization of our culture. But people that live in the hypersexualized culture will end up delaying marriage because of this. Both of these things, worshiping and obsessing when a perfect 10 out of 10 is found, and holding out for a perfect 10. And what happens when you're following this idealized thing is that you put down that which is real. So you become excessively judgmental and critical of prospective partners. There's people having false beliefs about sex in general and what it could look like and what it should look like, right? And that does hurt the marriage as well. But most of all, fear that once an addict, always an addict, that will never be completely free, spending the rest of our lives craving the occasional porn-induced orgasm at odd times. So this is definitely going back to what we were reading earlier up here. Up here, the only thing that prevents us from quitting is fear, fear caused by the belief that we'll have to survive an indeterminate period of misery and deprivation. The fear that it's torture, basically, that the willpower method is torture. If, as I did, you've already tried all the conventional ways to quit and have been through the misery and torture of the willpower method, you'll not only be affected by that fear, but you'll be convinced you can never quit, because everyone that tries the willpower method, well, willpowers eventually fade and everyone has a breaking point. And then what happens when they reach that breaking point? They go back to pornography and masturbation. If you're apprehensive, panic stricken, or feel that the time is not right for you to quit, let me assure you that your apprehension and panic isn't relieved by porn, it's caused by it. Another thing, porn is the problem, not the solution, right? You didn't decide to fall into the porn trap, but like all traps, it's designed to ensure that you remain trapped. Ask yourself, when you viewed those first porn pictures and videos, did you decide to come back to view them as long as you live? So when will you quit? Tomorrow? Next year? Stop kidding yourself. The trap is designed to hold you for life. Go back to the magic button. I don't believe in magic buttons, but the easy peasy method is an easy method, or we can say an easier method than many other methods. Easy peasy method works just like a magic button. Let me make it quite clear. Easy peasy isn't magic, but for myself and others who found it so easy and enjoyable to quit, it seems like it. The warning is as follows. This is a chicken and egg situation. Every addict wants to quit, and every addict can find it easy and enjoyable to quit. It's only fear that prevents users from attempting to quit. The single greatest gain is to be rid of that fear, but you won't be free of that fear until you complete the book. Let us continue with what he put in bold. You have nothing to lose. That is it for the introduction. Hopefully, guys, you found benefit of this. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I expect you guys to read chapter 2 before next week when I make a video on chapter 2. And if you need help or you want coaching, I will be offering coaching online. I will put the link in the description below. Take care, peace out, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.